between New Caledonia's indigenous Kanak population and Europeans. Referendums on independence have failed to resolve the issue of self-determination.
A whistleblower who helped expose allegations of Australian war crimes in Afghanistan has been jailed for almost 6 years. David McBride pleaded guilty to 3 counts of stealing and sharing secret military information with journalists. He said he felt a moral duty to speak out after internal complaints were ignored. World News from the BBC. Georgia's parliament is expected to vote today on a controversial law on organizations and foreign funding that has caused weeks of mass street protests. The chamber is dominated by the governing party, which has promised that the bill will pass. Protesters believe it will adversely affect Georgia's vibrant civil society and its chances of entering the European Union. Human rights groups are urging the British government and industry chiefs to put pressure on Saudi Arabia's leaders over a BBC report that revealed Saudi forces were told to kill in order to build a futuristic city. A UK trade conference is due to open in the Saudi capital, but rights campaigners have urged Britain's delegation to demand an independent investigation into the killing of a villager. The European Union's Fundamental Rights Agency says while more LGBT people are open about who they are facing more violence and bullying. The results came in the agency's latest survey of 100,000 people in the EU member states and 3 Balkan countries. Here's Bethany Bell.
The survey said that LGBTIQ people were now able to live more openly, a sign of what it called slow but gradual progress. But it said there were still high levels of violence and harassment. Many of the respondents said they avoided holding hands in public with their same-sex partner for fear of being attacked. Over half of trans, non-binary and gender-diverse people said they had suicidal thoughts.
50 countries meet at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris today to try to find safer ways of cooking in the developing world. They're following up on a report that found almost 4 million people in Europe die early because of fumes inhaled from wood fires or basic stoves. BBC World News.
Thanks very much indeed for that positive news. Your news day from the BBC with Victoria Walter and Rob Young. Thanks very much indeed for joining us today. We hope you're doing really well. Coming up this half hour, you'll hear news from Gaza, from Ukraine and from Brazil. And it's kind of what we'll be here with all your sports online and Ranjit Tuari with the business news, and including why meme stocks, which have been quiet for a bit, have made a comeback on the US stock market.
Fierce fighting continues in Jabalia in northern Gaza after the Israeli military went back into areas where it said Hamas had regrouped. Residents who fled say that they had seen tanks advancing towards Jabalia's refugee camp, which has come under heavy bombardment since Saturday. Clashes have also been reported from around Rafah in the south, which had been home to some 1 million displaced Palestinians, and where Israel has pledged to launch a full-scale ground invasion despite international pleas to refrain. The United Nations says that 360,000 people have now fled Rafah since MSF began a week ago. Medical staff at the Kuwaiti hospital in Rafah have now also received an evacuation order from Israeli forces. It's one of the last remaining hospitals in Rafah. Other hospitals in Gaza are also reporting that they could be out of action after the Israeli military closed the southern Rafah crossing with Egypt. Let's now speak to Medical Aid for Palestinians Acting Director of Advocacy and Campaigns, Asil Baldoon, who is in the occupied West Bank. Good morning to you and welcome to Newsday. What do you know about those evacuation notes or orders from the staff or by the staff for the staff of the Kuwaiti hospital in Rafah?
Yes, good morning to you all. So the latest information we have received was last night, where the medical staff have confirmed that they are still breathing and they're working as much as possible in the Kuwaiti hospital, as the Israeli army still did not invade the hospital as they did with every other hospital. So we're still not clear what will be the future procedures on the Kuwaiti hospital, but the staff was asking for international protection last night, as it's the only, as you mentioned, the only operating hospital in Gaza. So the injured people have no other place to go to, and the staff wanted to make the public well aware that they're still operating, but they are asking for international protection. And the other two main hospitals, one of them is UTC Yaesu has been evacuated fully, and the other one, the Hilal Emirati Hospital, is only a maternity hospital.
If they do not evacuate as they've been ordered to, what do they risk happening?
So usually the Israeli army will give them two options: either evacuate, or they're risking their own lives and the patient's lives. So they are left with no choice. But they're still, until now, they decided not to evacuate until they receive another direct order. As the first evacuation order was received in the vicinity of the hospital, not inside the hospital. So that's why it's giving them another buffer to stay at the hospital until they receive a direct evacuation order.
What impact has all the evacuations from hospitals had on the people of the territory?
So imagine we have around 1 million population under attack and ground invasion, with actually no medical facilities available but the Kuwaiti hospital, which I should emphasize, it's a small NGO hospital, not equipped in any way for the mass casualties and mass injuries that has been the impact of the Israeli invasion and the mass influx of patients. So first of all, the closure of the border means, for example, as MAP, we are unable to deliver the aid, the medical aid that we usually deliver to hospitals. We are unable to let our EMTs, the emergency medical doctors, access Gaza. So the patients and the whole population of Rafah are left with the bare minimum of healthcare services and without access to humanitarian aid, such as tents. We have been trying to get tents in another area for so long now, and we can't. And I have been receiving non-stop calls of people trying to just get a tent or a roof where they can shelter in.
In terms of what medical aid for Palestinians does on the ground, I wonder if you can tell us some of the challenges that you faced in the last 7 months, even last week.
So the challenges are countless. But the first challenge is, of course, getting in through the border. It makes the procedure very complicated. The second is the delivery of aid inside Gaza, as our own colleagues have no safety measures. They're always risking their lives when they deliver aid to hospitals, as Israel has been targeting humanitarian aid workers, as we have seen deliberately, and we have more than 200 aid workers being killed. So the first thing is access, the second is safety, and the third is also the amount of needs, the vast amount of needs. Regardless of how much aid you get in, it's not enough.
Thank you so very much for your time. Now I was taking that to Asil, Asil Baidu, who is with the medical aid for Palestinians in the West Bank.
It's Tuesday on the BBC, and our business presenter, Ranjana Tiwari, is back with us from the business desk in Singapore. And we're going to talk about meme stocks, which have been quiet for a while, but have made a comeback on US stock markets. But before we talk about why, you're going to have to remind us what they are.
That's right. It was the so-called Reddit rally, which saw shares of GameStop was among them. And GameStop is actually a video games brick and mortar store, a business that was seen as largely unprofitable. Its shares surged as much as 21-fold over 2 weeks in January 2021, before crashing to pre-surge levels in the subsequent days. And there were a few other businesses, including the theater chain AMC, which was not doing very well. But on the stock market, because of lots of people going onto Reddit and saying, hey, let's invest in this business, their shares were doing very well on the US stock market.
So these shares are purely going up in value because people on this chat forum decided that they should. Okay, fine. So what's led to the resurgence then of these so-called meme stocks?
Yeah, well, overnight, the shares of GameStop again surged nearly 75%, and it's not clear exactly why, but lots of people are saying it's because of a social media finance influencer called Roaring Kitty, and who was credited with starting the 2021 meme stock rally. He returned to X.com, formerly Twitter, after being away from the app for 3 years. GameStop shares hit an 18-month high as a result and had to be halted multiple times for volatility. It also led to other meme stocks doing quite well. Again, those businesses are not doing very well. They're largely seen as being unprofitable in this day and age. The theatre chain AMC got a boost, and despite GameStop cutting jobs in its actual stores, we saw more than a 70% rise in its share value overnight.
Thanks very much indeed. One to watch, certainly that's our business presenter, Saranjana Tiwari. Well, let's cross to our sports presenter now. Isaac is back with more